Good Lord, Jesus Christ, holy shit, god damn. I think I've gotten all the puns out that I needed to do. Let's get on with this review. So you know how I knew that this movie was gonna be good? Because I had one of these fucking things for the marketing.
It's the horror movie of the year. They're gonna be talking about this for years.
Obviously that's sarcasm, but in all seriousness, seeing this marketing tactic for this film, a religious neon horror film, R-rated one, I mean, call it whatever you want, call me whatever you want, but that got me a little bit fucking excited. I know it's cliche, so really quickly, let me just clarify how thankful I was to have gotten this screener. And believe me, I was thankful. I wanted to see this movie. I was actually saying in a post that I made before seeing the movie that the drive to this screener was actually, took longer than the film's actual runtime. Let me just say something though. This movie is supposed to come out on March 22nd. This movie is coming out March 22nd. Before I got the screener, I was like, holy shit, these 3 horror films, all on the same weekend? Yeah, I was starting to panic. I was like, I'm gonna have to eliminate one. I'm gonna be burnt out. Expenses. This screener kind of saved my ass. But without further ado, guys, a nun horror film from Neon, starring Sydney Sweeney. Let's talk about Immaculate. Yeah, so again, this is a nun horror film, which is obviously not my go-to trope when it comes to the genre. But again, a Neon release, which I am a big fan of, just that studio, especially when it comes to their horror films, which for this year specifically, it looks like that's going to be a pretty big year for them. I reacted to this trailer when it came out, not only to be the most excited, but maybe the only time ever excited for a nun horror film. So really quickly, guys, the premise here reads, a devoutly religious woman named Cecilia is offered a role at an illustrious convent in the Italian countryside. Her seemingly picture-perfect new home is soon revealed to hold horrifying secrets. And with that, and with there only being one trailer, not really revealing too much as far as the actual story or what will transpire, right off the bat, how this starts, I was like, okay, fine. The horror is solid enough, albeit some stuff that is definitely irritating already, writing-wise, as far as character choices, but good performances, fine enough horror, and a solid intro for this still unknown horror film. But I'm just gonna get this right out the gate. Surprisingly, there was a handful of dark comedy in this film, which wasn't an issue at all because, and this just goes for a lot of things in this movie, but it felt very rooted to the lore of this film, as far as the whole religious aspect, whether that was awkward or it was to the point of traumatized, just fucking over it nuns busting out god damn it during really neon horror shit based stuff very nonchalantly. But as far as the movie itself, just getting through the intro and everything, I was very taken aback by this, and this honestly set me up for how I would feel just overall throughout the movie. But this started off with the fact that Sydney Sweeney didn't really have a really good, necessary, or really genuine actual character intro in this movie. We just see what was a solid enough intro, and then we see Sydney Sweeney's character just kind of getting thrown into this movie, and it's just this is movie. You watch movie now. And it just starts. And from that point on, I will say that how I felt about the first act, it was one of those things kind of how I felt about the intro. I was like, okay, it's solid enough, it's fine. But once I saw after that intro and after that first act that the rest of the movie seemed to be just this, that's where I have some issues. Which some of this may not sound like the biggest deal with the short runtime of the film, and as well as it just revolving around secrecy. Because again, what I liked in the intro, and even when I was what I thought was fine in the first act, when I found out that that was just going to be just the movie as a whole, which was just you really waiting to see what the movie was, what the secrets were that were going to be revealed, it kind of just made you feel like Sydney Sweeney's character, where you were just thrown into this movie and you're just okay, I'm just going to go with the flow, try and figure shit out, and once the movie really starts, not really get that deep into it, but just have more questions that just kind of fucked up my viewing. But now, as far as the horror in this movie, there are a lot of scares, which, I mean, the horror is consistent, sure, but, I mean, you'd also kind of hope for that with this being an R-rated neon horror film that's only 89 minutes. And also, I will say that, for what they are effective enough, but they don't feel fully needed. And that goes into the points of a lot of them are admittedly jump scares and like a lot of the horror as far as what it is, they do feel like callbacks to like other religious horrors, whether that be Hereditary or like Rosemary's Baby. And also like I stated earlier, pretty much everything in this film, whether it be like the dark comedy, the story, the horror, it's all rooted into that like religious horror theme. And that goes into the horror. There are just a lot of like nun and, you know, convent-based horror that is consistent, but just doesn't feel fully needed as far as like what the scares are. Especially with just how vague the movie is, with like the film's tone and pacing overall. Which, to be fair, the pace and tone, it does kind of like fit this movie's like aesthetic, where throughout the whole movie, it just feels like they're hiding and like building up toward some kind of big reveal. And just as this being the entire movie, like just the movie itself, you do want to really get invested and just lean into it, but it just feels so much like after the first act, just seeing that the movie is just gonna be this within like, you know, just a few minutes. Just once you realize this and once you see how just very fast the movie is, it just feels like by the end, a lot of fucking things are missing. Like, for example, going back to Sydney Sweeney not really having an actual character setup, and with how selective, literally, the film is with, like, what it chooses to show, with a short runtime like this, and with a film being revolved around, like, secrecy. Though, I will say this, what is shown is appropriate enough as far as vagueness and, like, mystery in that neon studio, like, indie horror sort of way. And all I can say to that is that hopefully it doesn't lose your trust with it being that. But for me, by the end, sadly, just nothing really stood out, felt genuinely needed, or was like really that rewarding. And it didn't feel like there was a genuine reason even to follow this specific character, other than the fact that Sydney fucking Sweeney was playing her. And personally, guys, I sadly just fell into the category of just not being fully invested in this one. And overall, I'm gonna have to give this one a mixed review. And it's interesting because the movie doesn't feel like it wastes anything. The runtime seems fitting, definitely wouldn't work as a short. It's just what is shown in the movie, looking back at it, it just feels like there is so much missing. Very last scene though, career best performance from Sydney Sweeney. Most horrifying thing period in the film, and with that, what a way to end the movie. So guys, that is going to do it for my thoughts on Immaculate. And yeah, overall guys, just this is a movie that you're either in or you're out. With the runtime, with how it just plays out tonally, with how everything lands in that like religious way, with it being a movie that does not hold your hand throughout, that you're just kind of have to like accept that from the very second to the very last minute, you're just like, what is it exactly? But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my thoughts on Immaculate. Once this movie comes out, definitely let me know what your guys' thoughts are upon it. I would definitely love to hear it. But with all that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching the review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.